Hey everybody, welcome once again to the official UFFS Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports vlogcast. I'm calling it vlogcast because we're doing this video, which I know you and I both love because you're so darn good looking, Larry, and that's why we continue to do video. You look good on TV. You look good with the UFFS backdrop, and I want to welcome you again to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Darren. I got a face for radio, they tell me. I don't do too much TV, so this is all new to me, being on camera for the most part. I've done a couple appearances, but I feel more comfortable on the radio, and maybe that's an appearance thing.
Yeah, no, it's no, you're looking good. It's I think it's going to work out well for you, and I appreciate that your wife let you put the UFFS wallpaper on one wall of your house. I think that was an excellent move, and I think it'll work well for you.
Yeah, I like the setup with the background there. It's better than the window and the door in the background. So we're looking more professional this time around for sure.
Absolutely. So of course, for everybody's knowledge out there, Larry Fisher is the Director of Media and Communications for UFFS. And so what we're going to do today, don't worry about my eyes. It's not birds flying around. I have to read my notes because I don't have the setup to have a teleprompter on my computer screen. So I will look off to the side from time to time. But I do want to focus today on the UFHL, the hockey platform. We're going to do a little bit of an update on all things NHL, Larry, because I know it's crazy what's happening out there. I can't keep up, nor do I honestly will admit I don't try that hard. And that's why we have guys like you to keep us up to speed. So we're going to talk about that, the UFHL Redraft Lottery. The redraft is coming up as well, but we'll get into that in just a couple of minutes. But first of all, Larry, a few things happening. First of all, the NHL is continually talking about getting back to play, and I think they've narrowed it down now. Still talking about 2 hub cities, but a couple of Canadian hub cities have dropped out of the mix. What's happening there?
Yeah, Vancouver pulled out, Vancouver's no longer in the mix, and what happened there was basically the public health officials said that we're not going to bend the rules whatsoever on social distancing and safety rules, and therefore the NHL had a couple of requests that they wanted to have some flexibility with, and it was a no-go. So it took Vancouver out of the running. So the 2 Canadian cities that are left are Toronto and Edmonton, and it sounds like it's kind of a toss-up between those two. They both put forward good bids. Edmonton has a little bit better COVID numbers, and Alberta's doing maybe a little bit better on COVID than Ontario, but both of them could provide the perfect bubble type setting where it shouldn't be too big of a concern. So Toronto, Edmonton, it's coming down to the wire between those two as Canadian host cities. And there's even talk that there's potential that both of them, it ends up Toronto and Edmonton, just because all along we thought Vegas was a front runner and was the lock to be the American host because they wanted one on each side of the border. But as you probably know, the COVID cases have flared or surged in Nevada since Vegas opened the casinos and opened the strip again. And so as those numbers rise, as do concerns of obviously the NHL officials and the Players Association as well. So they love Vegas. They'd love to be there. But if it's not safe environment, you might end up with Toronto and Edmonton emerging as the hub cities. Los Angeles and Chicago are still sort of the other options in the U.S. Again, if Vegas keeps surging or Nevada keeps surging with COVID, they might look at Chicago or Los Angeles. But Vegas is the front runner if they do an American city, and Edmonton and Toronto are a toss-up for the Canadian city with the potential to both come away winners.
That would be awesome. Can you imagine the NHL playoffs being entirely hosted in Canada? Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, that'd be wicked. And they could do it because they didn't want to have the home, they didn't want anybody to have a home ice advantage. So what they would actually do is they would put all the Toronto and all the Eastern Conference teams would play out of Edmonton, and Edmonton and Vancouver and all the Western Conference teams would play out of Toronto. So there'd be no home ice advantage. Nobody would have any real rink familiarity or anything like that. So I think that would work well, because if they do Edmonton and Vegas, either way, Vegas or Edmonton are going to have a home ice advantage. One of them are going to have to play in their home rink. So that's why I think Toronto, Vegas might emerge as well, because all the Eastern teams would love to go to Vegas and the Western teams would end up in Toronto. But Toronto, Edmonton's looking pretty promising too. So I'd like to see that all 24 playoff teams above the border, where obviously our COVID is a lot more under control than in the States.
Well, we have very little COVID here in Manitoba, Larry. So, but I know that Winnipeg isn't into the running as much as I would like that, but we just don't have the facilities or the setups to be able to do so. So, we'll throw that one out the window, and we won't talk about that anymore. Other than that, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say maybe a late entry if everywhere else kind of flares up. But you're right. I think it's the setup more than anything. They want a city that can build that bubble with hotels and accommodations mainly, but also entertainment. They want the players, if they're going to be there for 2 or 3 months, they can't just stay in a hotel room. They need restaurants and some pubs and stuff. And all these other cities that are finalists, they all have that district right around their rink where it's almost like you're at a resort, right? You got everything you would have at an all-inclusive resorts right there, so your families can come with you and they can be comfortable and have amenities as well. So I think that's why they broke it down the way they did with the finalists, the final 5. And Vegas, obviously, it doesn't get better than the Vegas Strip. The players love it there. And obviously, Toronto and Edmonton both have that district going for them too.
Absolutely. So some really good points. But, here's what I'm thinking. We'll give up all of that here in Winnipeg. Obviously, that's where I live. But if we can just win the first pick in the draft, if we need to give up all of this to get Lafreniere, because I understand that Winnipeg actually, depending on how if they lose out in the initial round, could have a shot.
Winnipeg does have a shot. That basically, if they lose to Calgary in the first round of the play-in round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, Winnipeg would have a 1 in 8 chance of getting a lottery drawn to have Alexis Lafreniere be one of their new franchise players. He'd be right up there with Patrick Laine and Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler. That would be a dynamic forward group for you to watch there in Winnipeg. Because one thing about Alexis Lafreniere is he's certainly NHL ready, and he's ready to make an impact next season. You look at last year's first overall pick, Jack Hughes. He was a bit on the small side. He didn't really come in and dominate the NHL. He's not a finalist for the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year, but Alexis Lafreniere, by all accounts, will be a Calder finalist and could be not a point per game player, but certainly could top 60 points in his rookie season. So any of those play-in losers are going to be pretty excited to be part of that lottery in mid-August.
So this NHL lottery, this is real different. This is probably the first time this formula or formulation has ever been seen, right? Quite an interesting turn of events over the last week here and what has gone on. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so basically the reason they did the lottery, and now a lot of people are saying, why didn't they just wait until after the play-in round when they know those 15 teams and do a lottery like every other year where the 15 teams are already decided and because right now they have a placeholder that won first overall, but also the teams that'll pick 9 to 15 are unknown as well. That's going to be determined by points percentage standings, but depending who loses out in the first round or in the play-in round of the playoffs. So it was kind of the best case, worst case scenario for the NHL with last night's lottery or Friday's lottery was the fact that they keep the suspense going because they don't know who's going to have the first overall pick. They get to do another event now, another lottery to decide the first overall pick. But at the same time, it's kind of a bummer for everybody who tuned in last night and was wondering, okay, where are we going to get to see Alexis Lafreniere play next season? And well, now you're going to have to wait at least another month and a half to get that answer. So, but obviously the picks 2 through 8 were decided last night, and that had a lot of drama as well because the Detroit Red Wings were by far the worst team in the National Hockey League this season. They had the best odds to pick first overall to get Alexis Lafreniere, and Detroit fell all the way from first to fourth. So they're going to pick 4th overall. Ottawa had the odds for 2nd and 3rd overall, and they're going to end up 3rd and 5th. So there was some suspense, there was some drama, but the biggest winner is a mystery as of today.
That's interesting stuff. I know I do feel bad for the Wings in how that turned out. For some reason, though, they say they weren't surprised. I guess just knowing on this new formulation and what was going to come out of it, I guess they probably didn't have their hopes up too high. I guess is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, so they had an 18.5% chance of getting the first overall pick. But when you do all the odds, all the math, the biggest percentage that they had was 4th overall. There was still a better chance that 3 other teams would get 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, just when you add all the other percentages together. So they still had realistically, 4th overall was always a possibility for them. And like people are saying today, Steve Yzerman was the 4th overall pick in 1983, and that worked out pretty well for Detroit. And this is Steve Yzerman's, he's back there for the draft this year. He's the general manager in Detroit, so could be coming full circle. He could pick a franchise player similar to himself and really help set up their rebuild. Although they would have loved Alexis Lafreniere at 1st overall, they're still going to get a cornerstone player at 4th overall.
Yeah, good point. And the Yzerman thing, it's interesting how history repeats itself. I didn't even think of that. So good tie-in. So all that aside, it looks like the NHL is trying really, really hard, as well as some of the other professional sports franchises or sports, I guess, associations out there. But it seems to me like the NHL is further ahead, but it's coming down to a vote, isn't it? Is this for sure going to go ahead, or what's going to happen here with the Players Association?
Yeah, so the entire return to play is being bundled in with the collective bargaining agreement. They want to extend the CBA and they want to return to play. And it's going to be every player in the National Hockey League and the National Hockey League Players Association, they're all going to have an individual vote. So there's 800 votes, give or take. Those players are going to decide on extending the CBA as well as returning to play. They don't vote separately on the two issues. It's all bundled together. And let's see how it comes out. And Elliot Friedman did a great article earlier this week that said, expect a nail biter. It's going to be close. The NHL Players Association is very divided whether they want to return to play, whether they like the escrow and the way the salaries and stuff are set up. It's expecting a flat cap where the salary cap won't go up, so people won't be able to get raises for 3 seasons. That's obviously an important factor for anybody who is an upcoming free agent in the next 3 years. They might not get a raise, whereas if the cap was moving the way it had been pre-COVID, there's a good chance some people would get $3 and $4 million annual raises. So those players are not happy with the way it's set up, and they're going to probably potentially vote no. And there's obviously health and safety concerns. There's players like Max Domi in Montreal who's got type 1 diabetes. It's a pretty big risk for him to come back and play. And there's other players that have some immunocompromised players that might not want to play as well. And a guy like Artemi Panarin, who's in the running for the Hart Trophy this year, he posted on Twitter and Instagram, put out a message basically saying, we need a deal done before we consider returning to training camp. As players, we need to stand united. So there is a real divide down the middle in the Players Association. And the NFL had their CBA kind of in the spring right around their draft, and their vote was basically 50-50. I think it was 1,019 to 989 or something. So it was that close. And Elliot Friedman said, expect similar for the NHL. It'll be so it's not 100% that we're returning to play. They got to get that yes vote, and it's going to be pretty close to 50-50.
So when does the vote take place, Larry?
Soon, this coming week, I believe. They have this agreement. Every day they update it, but it sounds like they're inching closer and closer to a vote. And obviously the Players Association wants a yes vote. They're pushing for a yes vote. So they're just trying to sell their membership and their union as much as possible to know that they have that yes vote coming, and then they'll put it to a vote. So I'm expecting Monday, Tuesday, for sure by Friday, we'll know if we're getting a return to play. We'll know the hub cities, and we'll know what the collective bargaining agreement is going to look like potentially for the next 6 seasons. It'll be locked in, which means no lockout, which is you can't have a lockout coming off COVID. That would be no good.
No. Wow. Okay. So, keep our ears to the ground this coming week. Big news in the NHL. So if they vote no, we can kiss the rest of this season and the Stanley Cup playoffs goodbye, essentially.
Yeah,
right?
And then they would continue to negotiate on a CBA, I guess, between now and next season. But, yeah, it would be a big setback, and the playoffs would be wiped out.
Wow. Okay. It's going to be interesting. We'll be touching base on that for sure in our next vlogcast. Absolutely. Let's move on to the UFHL, the Ultimate Franchise Hockey League. We like to do, emulate the NHL and try and keep up with the changes the NHL is formulating here based on COVID. Also had a redraft. Andrea Ellis was the star of that show. Took place for anyone out there that wants to view it. It can be viewed on the YouTube channel. What was the reason for the redraft?
So the reason for the redraft was ultimately when they did the initial UFHL draft in January, when the UFF Sports officially launched, 17 of the 31 franchises were sold at that time, and the other 14 teams were auto-picked. And after that, obviously we now, as of Friday, have sold all 31 franchises. They're all owned at this point, which is awesome news for UFF Sports. But basically what happened is, as they were trying to sell the remaining franchises that had auto-picked rosters from the initial draft, all the rosters were relatively fair. There was no bad team to take over. But still, when you join a fantasy league that's new, you want to pick your own roster. I know myself as a fantasy player, you never want to take over an auto-pick team or inherit somebody else's team that has left the league. You like to have your own team. And so many of the potential owners expressed to us that we would like to have a redraft or pick our own team. And is there any way we could do this? And basically, we just put our collective heads together, decided why not? I mean, the 20 teams that were picked and are happy with their rosters, they get to keep their team. They're not losing any players to this redraft. So let's just take the players from the 11 rosters that were auto-picked, throw them all in a pool. You get 300 players, and let these 11 new owners pick from that pool of 300 players. And there's a lot of good talent there. They're going to come out with similar teams to the 20 that are already picked. It's much like the NHL. There's a salary cap, and all these teams are going to look very similar to an NHL roster. There won't be any runaway contenders or, really stacked rosters, and there won't be tons of really young rebuilding teams either. It'll be very similar to the NHL because we have the salary cap ceiling and floor, so they only have 21.3 million wiggle room there to either go young or go for the cup this year. So it'll be interesting to see how the results are, but that was the rationale, was that a number of the people who were interested in buying franchises would buy on the basis that they would get to pick their own roster, and we said, why not? It sounded like a good idea and another fun event for the UFHL.
That makes a lot of sense the way you put it that way. I guess for me, usually I would have preferred to have that excuse, because I'm not an avid fantasy sports guy. I haven't done a lot of it, to just do the office pool drafts. Do that every year. That's a lot of fun with the buddies and the office people. But this way, if it was auto picked, I could have said, well, this is why my team sucks, because basically, I didn't pick it. So I guess it would have worked for me that way. No blame, no shame, right?
And it can go either way. So the way it worked, 6 franchises, 6 owners had the option to opt into the redraft or to keep the auto-picked roster that they chose. And it was 50-50. 3 of them decided to keep the roster that was previously picked. And some of them had made some additions to that roster, so they didn't want to give up the players they added and stuff. So 3 of the owners kept their team that was auto-picked, and 3 of the owners threw the roster back and have joined the redraft. So it was 50-50, so you wouldn't be alone in potentially wanting to keep the auto-pick team.
Well, I guess, if you look at it from an avid fantasy sports fan's perspective, though, you want to build something from the ground up and you want to have full control of that. And I can see the rationale for that. Absolutely makes a lot of sense, and more excitement to the whole thing, right? So it's good. So now that we've had the redraft, we've got the selections made. Everybody knows the order they're going to select their draftees now. So we're going to move on. I guess the next important date is July 11th. We are going to do the draft. How's that going to work?
Yeah, so the redraft will be on July 11th. We're still working out the formatting and what website we're going to host it on and all the rest. But there's some logistics there. But basically, everybody's super excited. The 11 owners, there's no bad pick. It's a 23-round snake draft. There's no such thing as a bad pick or a bad spot in a snake draft. If you won the lottery like Jesse Gill did and got first overall, your next pick, you have to wait till 22nd. If you lost the lottery, or quote unquote lost the lottery like Kevin Stesiak did, and you end up with the 11th pick, well, you also get the 12th pick. You're picking back to back there. So you're going to get 2 good players no matter what. I know Dean Millard from Duckman's Domination from Edmonton Media Circle. Everybody knows Dean Millard. He ended up with the 8th overall pick. And therefore he gets the 15th overall pick as well. So he's still going to get 2 of his top 15 players from that pool of 300. So like I said, there's no such thing as a bad pick. Those guys are all going to come out with very strong NHL comparable rosters because of the salary cap. So if they play it the way an NHL team would, they could draft their top 6 forwards, their top 4 defensemen, and get their starting goaltender, and then fill out the bottom end of the roster with depth players as far as your 3rd and 4th line, your bottom pairing D, and obviously a backup goaltender, and the salary cap should work.
Okay, so I'm gonna probe on Larry's intel here for a minute, because when I'm doing a draft, I never know when I should pick my goalie, especially if you have the first pick and now you have to wait until, it's a snake draft. Now you're picking your second pick a lot later on. When is the right time to pick your goalie?
You got to be aware of the goalie pool. And I mean, in a normal draft or a beginner draft, you'd have all the goalies available. But here it's a limited pool. There's 22 goalies, 11 teams. So everybody's going to get 2 goalies out of that. And basically, you look at the top end for this pool, you got Carey Price, who we all know is a great goaltender, but has a pretty big contract. He's got a hefty salary. You got Sergei Bobrovsky, who, again, great goalie down in Florida now, but signed a massive contract. So salary could be how much salary do you want to put into your goaltending, I guess, is the big question. And then you got a guy like John Gibson in Anaheim, where Anaheim's really a rebuilding team. He might not win a ton of games, but he's probably one of the best goalies in the league. And you got a lot of other guys there that are interesting goalie options as well. Some older guys like Jonathan Quick. How many years does he have left? Los Angeles is rebuilding. But for as far as when to pick your goalie, I think everybody will have their individual strategy. You also look at the scoring system. How much are goalies worth in our system? Are they? And of course, we've designed our system where every position, every player is worth the same. We have a number of scoring categories, but we've made it so goalies aren't worth any more or any less than a defenseman or a forward. Everybody's equal. So, but I do think that looking at the goalie pool, I wouldn't be surprised if those names we've mentioned for goalies, Pekka Rinne's another one who's on the back 9 of his career, but has a star goaltender. Those sort of 4 or 5 star goalies, I could see them going in the first round or certainly on the way back in the second round because as everybody knows, goaltender is a big part of an NHL team and a big part of a fantasy team as well.
Absolutely. So you're not going to tell us where you would select a goalie then? You're going to leave that for the fantasy franchise owners instead?
Yeah, I'll let them come up with
their own chances.
Yeah, I'll let them come up with their own strategy. But in all honesty, I just following the redraft lottery last night or on Friday night and seeing the player pool that we put together, I wish I had a team in. I kind of thought about my strategy if I had the first overall pick or the 11th overall pick and sort of mapped it out. So I would certainly have a lot of fun with it. And I do think I would probably take a goaltender sooner than later. Maybe not in the first round because there's a lot of good forwards and some real high-end defensemen. But probably I'd get it on the way back. If I noticed, put it this way, if a couple of those names were dropping off ahead of me, I'd grab one before I was into that second tier of goalies that maybe aren't as promising or aren't as elite as far as once those top 5 or 6 are gone, you might not want the leftovers, put it that way. Right,
yeah, okay, that's kind of what I was thinking. That's my biggest struggle in the office pools is when to pick the goalie, when to select the goalie. I always have a hard time with that, and I end up with leftovers is usually how it goes. So, yeah, I think I know where you're going there. So the redraft coming up July 11th, and then we have a wild card draw, which is further to kind of emulate the new formula of the NHL playoff format and the expanded teams. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So we're again, like you said, we're mirroring the NHL in every way. So with our playoff bracket, we're going from 16 teams like a normal Stanley Cup playoffs. We've built it out the same way the NHL is to do 24 franchises. We're calling them the Klein Cup playoffs. That's what the UFHL playoffs will be known as. And we're building it out to 24 teams. And basically what we did is we looked back and we said, okay, there were 17 owners that signed up and participated in the initial UFHL draft. And there were 5 more owners who bought in right after that between January and March 12th when the NHL shut down. So we said those 22 teams, regardless of where they were in the so-called regular season standings, they should get to make the playoffs ahead of the placeholders that were auto-picked rosters and didn't have an owner yet. So our 22 original owners from the UFHL are all going to make the playoffs based on the regular season order of standings. And then there's 2 spots left, and we're going to do a wild card draw from the 9 newest owners that are participating in the redraft. Out of those 9, 2 of them will be drawn to be the first and second wild cards to round out that 2014 bracket, and they'll be in the play-in round. And if they lose out in the play-in round, they'll still have a chance at getting Alexis Lafreniere in our actual entry auction lottery, which will be held at the same time as the NHL's in August. So very much mirrors it that way, and that's why I say it's kind of a best-case scenario the way the NHL lottery played out for the UFHL as well, because we're going to have the Lafreniere and the auction lottery in August. And if they found out who got first overall in the NHL on Friday night, they wouldn't have had to redo that lottery. So now we both get to have a second lottery, and the suspense and excitement can carry over to after the play-in round, providing we get that return to play and COVID COVID doesn't rear its ugly head and force the NHL to shut down during that play-in round. But providing we get through that, there'll be a second lottery, both in the NHL and the UFHL. And so obviously the two teams that make the playoffs out of the wild card draw, they'll hope to win the playoffs, right? I mean, once you're in, anything can happen, and they'll have a freshly picked roster from the redraft. Maybe they'll go on a run, but if they don't, there's still that fallback that if they lose in the play-in round, they're still going to have a chance at a really high pick or a high entry into the auction that we do for our rookie draft of sorts as an auction, and they would be able to get a high priority order to get into the auction room and land one of those top 5 prospects from the 2020 NHL draft.
You know what? You said a couple of words there, Larry. You said excitement and suspense. That's what I like about this UFFS and UFHL format and platform. And there's a lot of opportunities to get a group of friends together now that we can mingle to a certain group size, depending on the territory or region you live in, of course. I better throw that disclaimer in there so I don't get trouble from some regional health authority. But, you can get together. You can grab some experts that you know of, friends or family members that might know a little bit more about the sport or good gets or planning and strategizing around building your team, right? So you can watch these drafts. You can participate. There's so many ways to be involved, and you're never really out. Even we'll talk about this on another vlogcast, but certainly, as you get into what we call the Klein Cup format, and even leasing players, and we'll touch on that topic another time. We probably won't have time today, but you're never really out in the UFFS UFHL platform.
Yeah, I think that was important for everybody. Everybody wants to stay involved and stay interested in the playoffs. And in the NHL, if your favorite team's out, chances are you follow the NHL close enough, you know the other teams, that interest is maintained. But we're new, and you're not going to know the other fantasy team's roster. And usually when your fantasy team gets knocked out, you don't pay too close of attention to what's happening in the fantasy playoffs. But here you will, because you're still going to have players involved, and you're still going to have a horse in the race, a dog in the fight, however you want to say it. So that interest will be maintained, and I think it's a very innovative, unique concept, the playoff draft and the way we're doing it. Like I said, we'll talk about that on another episode, but certainly I think the interest will be maintained, and everybody has something to look forward to in the Klein Cup playoffs.
Absolutely. Looks exciting. Let's hope this vote goes through on the NHL side of things, so the UFFS and UFHL platform can continue on doing the great things they're doing. I guess we'll keep our fingers crossed, and probably in some of your media announcements, we'll have a good indication of what's going to happen, hopefully at the end of next week. So, we'll keep our ears to the ground on that. One other thing I want to touch on before we're finished our program today is the scouting aspect of the UFHL. Very, very important. Now, as I understand it, we talked about this last time, an opportunity for absolutely anyone to get involved. If they're not a franchise owner, if they're not a general manager or managing someone's team, or even if they are, you can still be a scout. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, the scouting, again, I mean, we keep saying innovative, unique, but those are the words that come to mind when you think about the scouting and the way it's going to work in the UFHL and across all of UFF sports eventually as we expand to other leagues and other sports. Scouting is going to be a part of it. And certainly in the NHL and in the real world, scouts find the players, they bring them to the they're out there scouring the world, finding the best talent and advising their owners and their general managers and stuff. These are the next kids that you're going to want, the future generation of talent. And that's what they're going to do in our platform, in our leagues as well. And so anybody who fancies themselves a scout will certainly want to get involved, because this is a chance to, if you find a guy and you post a video on Twitter and you say, this is the next big thing, and he is the next big thing, you might get a couple congratulations or, oh, good job. Everybody will forget who found him. But here, it's all going to be tracked, and you're going to be able to monetize your eye for talent. If you find the next Sidney Crosby at Shattuck St. Mary's or, Connor McDavid or whoever, you're going to be able to you're going to be able to control that asset till his NHL draft, and everybody's going to remember that you were the person who brought him to the platform, and that just basically let your scouting ability shine and be rewarded financially, or at least within the gameplay with score tokens. There will be a significant amount of potential for scouts to monetize their eye for talent.
That's amazing. I love that opportunity for anyone, just generally anyone that wants to be involved can be involved. It's very easy to do. I guess probably the easiest way to find out more information is just to go to the website. I know that Larry, you're very active on Twitter and putting all that stuff out there. So there's probably an opportunity for people just to reach out to you or UFFS in general if they want more information. Is that correct?
Yeah, both the official account at UFF Sports and myself at Larry Fisher _KDC. We're both very accessible and we're on Twitter regularly, so you can reach out that way. And certainly we have a news section on our website, UFF Sports /news or uffsports.com/news. You can go there. Like we've been talking, we've mapped out our upcoming schedule for the entire summer. What events are coming up in July and August. You can go there and read more about where we're going in the future with the UFHL, and certainly at the homepage at uffsports.com in the top right corner, that's where you can register as a scout and get involved. So the website's a work in progress. Obviously, we have an updated website coming down the pipe in the future, but certainly you can go there and keep track of what's going on for current events and what's to come with the UFHL and UFF Sports as a whole.
Awesome. So it's all there. Lots of good information. And everybody, you heard it. You heard Larry said, go there. www.uffsports.com. Go to the news section and all the important dates and everything's mapped out and there's links and etc. You can find them on Facebook, Twitter, of course. I think on Instagram and almost all social media and a YouTube channel as well. And that's where actually you'll find the redraft lottery is I think posted on there as well.
It is, yeah. That's definitely it's worth the watch. Like I said, Andrea Ellis was the star of the show. She did a great job putting that together and making it a professional presentation. It's not just names in a hat. She's got a really professional setup there. It looks good. She did a good job with it. So we're proud of her efforts, and certainly I think the owners were impressed with her presentation as well. The ones that tuned in, it was a lot different than a normal fantasy hockey league. Just that alone tells the owners, hey, this is next level fantasy. And I think that got everybody interested to watch the way the video revealed the results and of our draft lottery or redraft lottery. And now there's a ton of excitement heading towards July 11th for the redraft, which we talked about.
Yeah, I did watch the redraft lottery and Andrea Ellis. And the big thing that occurred to me was that if Pat Sajak sees that, we're going to lose her to Wheel of Fortune. So she's got to be careful. We can't lose good talent like that, Larry.
No doubt, hey, that's she's the star of the show there, and I think she might have a permanent role as far as the wild card draw and the entry auction lottery that'll come in August. I think we'll be seeing more of Andrea Ellis on camera. She solidified herself with that performance.
Yeah, you got to be careful what you get roped into because you're roped in for almost forever in this business. I want to thank you, Larry, for joining us again today. Larry, of course, the Media and Communications Director for UFFF Sports. Talking about all things sports, very, very well informed in the NHL, which is great for me. So I can be up to speed in a 30-minute chat with you. And, of course, all things UFHL and UFFF sports. So thanks again, Larry, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Darren, and looking forward to episode 3.
All right.